Virginia here with Jennie Lee Gems. I wanted to show you how to start a pine needle basket by wrapping the first coil. And wrapping just means you go over and over the pine needles until they're totally covered with thread. So this is an Australian mookite, I believe. I won at a raffle at the Glendora Rock Club. I've set it in resin and drilled around it to protect it. So this piece is thinner, and I didn't want to have it break after I get my basket made. So what I'm planning on doing is wrapping all around the first row, and I want it to be this dark red to kind of pop the color in the middle. So I am going to be using Apache pine needles. A friend of mine gathered them for me, and she glycerined them in Arizona. They smell really good, very woodsy, very strong. In comparison to, so these seem thicker. They seem more stout. There are 3 needles per fascicle. So here are the long leaf that we usually use, and you could see they're quite a bit longer, about 18 inches. And these are about 10 to 12. But the smell is so strong. They smell so good, and they're so beautiful and very stout, very thick, very solid. They're just the most beautiful needles, along with the Florida longleaf. So these are the Florida longleaf, and you can see they're really, really long. And here are the Apache pine needles, and they are not quite as long. At any rate, I tried to get some for a long, long time and finally got some. So that's what I am using in this basket. Now, I might leave the caps on because they're so pretty as I get further along, but to start it off, I've cut the caps off. So I usually grab about 4 needles, 4 pine needles, 4 or 5, and just kind of bunch them up. Then tie a little knot. Now, I just pulled this thread off, so it's going to be 2 arms length, so it's a little bit bigger. So usually what I do is just tie a regular little knot, whichever way you like to do it. Now, I am right-handed, but I coil from left to right usually. On some stitches, I'll go the other way. I can work either way. I just completed a doll made from pine needles, and I was doing a lot coiling to the left instead of to the right. So this is normally how I do it. Leave a little tail. Now, I could coil right on top here, or I could coil to the side. I think that I am going to coil to the side because I want, I like the light showing through the resin, and so that you could see the stone a little better. So I like to start on one side, the right side normally. You could start anywhere you want, but as you work on your project, if you're going to make any changes, I recommend starting in the same area on the next row. That's just the way I was taught. So tie up your little bunch of pine needles. What do you think? Maybe I should go right over. I might go right over. We'll try it, and if I don't like it, I'll take it out and redo it. So I am going to go right over the resin because I think there's still enough margin here for the light to come through. So we shall try it. So I'm going to try about midway down, and I'm just going to pick this hole to go through. Might help if I point it the right way. So let's try to keep our thread from tangling because it's so long. There we go. We've got it. So normally what I do, hopefully I'm on camera, I will check will do, get it situated where I want it. And I always leave a decent sized tail because you can trim that once you get all the way around. But if you have it too short, the needles can slip through. So then I go ahead and turn it over and tie it on the back. And I will put a couple of tight knots there. So, and I leave a tail here as well because as you're working with it, it could loosen up and you want to be able to tighten it. So I tie down 4. I'm going to go ahead. These are nice and thick. I'm going to go ahead and put another pine needle in, or see if I can get it in under there. There, I think it's in good enough. And I'm not putting a gauge on just yet because there's not enough needles to hold a gauge on. I usually use sometimes a metal gauge, but normally I use a old straw and just kind of cut it and make it form around. So see, that's pretty snug in there, tied in the back. This is waxed thread and it does tend to move a bit. So then just start wrapping. Now, if you wanted to, you could put beads on top of this. There's a lot of room, but we're not going to do that right now. So just continue wrapping it. Just wrap it to cover the needles. As you get down a little ways. Now, I've got a lot of room. I've got a lot of room on this resin. And between the drilled holes, I usually use about 1/4 of an inch between. Let's see, I lost one of my pine needles. That's not a problem. I can kind of force it in there maybe. And it's not going to matter when I start wrapping again. So slowly you want to get up to about 1/4 of an inch. You don't really want to wrap over the top of each other. You want it to keep going straight, but it is a little floppy in the beginning. So keep wrapping. I like to pull it snug, push it down. Got a few more times to go around. And to me, the first row is usually the hardest because you're trying to get everything down nice and tight. So then once you reach that second hole, go ahead and go through that hole. And continue wrapping. So you can, if you want to make sure that it's really attached, you can go through twice. And these are big holes. Now, if your drill holes are smaller, you may only be able to go through once, depending on the size of thread and needle you're using. So here I'm going to go ahead and add another pine needle. And it is snug in there, so you're going to have to push it in. And I'm just slowly adding pine needles. These are thicker. I'm not going to need as many. And as I go, to try to get to about 1/4 of an inch. And then once I get to that, I will put a straw on the end. I just want to get to the next hole. Just keep wrapping. And I usually go back to front. But you can do it whatever way you're comfortable with. So I'm down to the next hole. I like all the pine needles to be covered because I am trying to pop this center. And so snug it down. Then I'm going to go through this hole twice because that's the way I did it with the second hole. Now the first hole I could have gone twice, but what's going to happen is when I get around, I'm probably going to go through that hole again on the second row. So there you go. So that's how it's looking. See how the red is, it's really going to pop that. And you see how it's getting thicker and thicker. Now the other thread that I have is this mustard color I'm going to use. I don't know what stitch I'm going to do next, but we shall see. So wrapping is, I'm just coming back to front and wrapping over the pine needles. Just making sure to cover them. I push down so that you don't want to see any pine needles peeking through there. Okay, I'll just finish this area. Make it to the next hole. Now, I don't know what I was thinking, that I don't usually drill these that far apart. I don't know why. Usually it is, I'm going to add another pine needle because I want it to start getting thicker. And not that it matters because I'm covering the pine needles, but I always add shiny side up. It just gives it a better look, and just out of habit, I'm doing it that way anyway, even though it's not going to show. I'm going to go back down that hole twice. I'm thinking, maybe what I was thinking is I was going to put some big red beads to start off. Maybe I go look for some beads and see what I was thinking. So there you go. That's how you start a pine needle basket with a wrapped row. So I'll show you as I get further. I can push that up over, and then when I'm doing the next row, it'll cover the holes. I don't really want the holes to show. I just want some light to show from the back. I'll see what that looks like as I go further. I might change it up. But that's how you start a pine needle basket with a wrapped row. Now, of course, if you are right-handed coiling to the left, it would just be held that way. But I am coiling to the right. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll show you as I get further. Okay, so I've made it all the way around, and each hole, oh, I missed one there. Each hole I went through twice to make it very sturdy. So I'm getting closer to the end here. I have 3 holes left, and I'm going to match up right here. I think that now, just to get this tail out of the way, it's pretty secure. I'm going to go ahead and cut this tail off. And I cut it off at a diagonal. Be careful not to cut your fingers or threads. So I just cut that at a diagonal, so it'll lay flat, and these will lay right up over it or next to it. However it works when we get there. I usually use smaller scissors. So now I'll just continue wrapping and connecting down in the holes. We're going to wrap it right up next to that. So now we're almost to the end of the first row. And so recall I trimmed this tail, and I'm just going to try to hide that down under that coil and then continue on to the next row. So it's kind of a tight spot right here. So as opposed to wrapping around, I'm just going to use the needle and just carefully go under those. Now when I get to the tail from where we started, I'm just going to wrap the whole thing together. Remember, we want to try to keep your thread flat. Don't overlap the other thread. And I'm constantly pushing it down so it's tight enough. So I'll just keep working my way around. And I'm going to try to cover that other tail as cleanly as possible. It's a tight spot in there, but And then I'm getting to the next hole where we're going to secure it down. So see how I'm encompassing or enclosing that first row, the tail of the first row, with the coil from the second row that we're going to start. And just trying to get it to lay down in there as clean as possible. Eventually it'll go right over it. Well, here I think we need to squint it down, and then we need to go down through the hole. And you recall I've been going twice. There's two. This will create the other. So now here, I have to try to get it under there without messing anything up. Nope, that's not going to work. I really want to cover this. I'll have to sew it over. There we go. Whatever way works to get it. You just want it to look really clean. As clean as possible. So I'm just locking down that tail from the first row. Very carefully. You'll see my nails. I don't know if you could see them on screen, but they're kind of yellow because I was working with turmeric and I couldn't get them off. So I painted them to kind of hide it, but it didn't hide it very well. So it kind of matches the basket. So I'm going to work this over here because the tail of these pine needles are going to be our second row. So this will be a little thicker, but it'll be fine when we move along. So I think I need about one more. Oops. I am going through the thread and I don't want to do that. No wonder it felt too tough. So I'm almost right up there. So you kind of just have to gauge whatever way it's going to make it look nice and clean. So I'm up to the second row and I'm going to start wrapping here, but then I am going to go. I just kind of figure it out as I go along to make it look good and also be sturdy, because it's your first row. You want it to really, and I don't want those overlapping, so let's move them. You want it to be very secure. So here I am going to go right down through that first hole where we started. So the stitch is going to overlap a bit, but it'll look fine. I just want to make sure that this whole area is very snug and secure. Nothing's going to come loose. And you recall we left a nice tail in the back. I taped it down here. So when I get done, I can tighten this up again, just to make sure nothing's going to move around. It's going to stay nice and snug. So I went through once. Do I want to? I think I want to go through twice. These holes are big enough that you can get the needle through. Then I'll just move all of that over so none of the needles show. Being a little picky here, but I just want to get it nice and snug. So there you go. It's all together. And then here I'll just start wrapping my second row. I'll go a little ways, and I think I'll just use up my thread. I don't like to waste thread. So I'm going to finish using up my thread. I should end up right over here where I started. And you recall that I said I like to start something new at the same area that I started the whole basket, and that was on the right. So I'm going to continue wrapping, use up the rest of my thread, tie it off, or whatever way I decide to do it. And I think I will switch to this mustard color then. And I'll probably, I don't know what stitch I'm going to use, probably the basic stitch. So there you have it, how to start a basket while you're wrapping. And I showed you what you do once you get around to this side. So if you are, I'm going to keep these on top here. So the next row will be on the side of it going down. And I may do another red row, or I might add the mustard color. We shall see. That's what it looks like on back. It looks pretty clean. There is one area right here. I only went through once, but it'll be fine. This is nice and sturdy. That's how you start a basket, wrapping a row. And I wrapped and put the row on top of the resin. You can certainly put it by the side of the resin or whatever you're using to use for the center of your basket. I hope that helps. Thank you so much for watching.